Hi folks, welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. This video may come across as a little doomsday-ish, but honestly that's not really what my intentions are. My hope is to challenge you to think, to question yourself. So hopefully you don't end up thinking, man, this guy's just trying to spread around a little fear and panic. Because that's not it at all. I want us all to be ready and to grow and to really face our fears now. Get that part out of the way. So when the things that are bad that are going to happen, we're ready for it. I want to challenge you to, question how dedicated, how prepared you are, how serious you are when it comes to survival. Are you willing, and how willing you are to sacrifice for that survival? How serious you are when it comes to making the decisions that you may have to make, the things that you may have to face when it comes to keeping yourself and your family alive and out of the grasp of the big brother. And I'm not questioning your dedication to survive and your willingness to sacrifice. I'm wanting you to question yourself. The reason why I'm bringing all this up is because as much as we, and I'm including myself in this, okay? So don't think that I'm up on a high pedestal looking down upon you. I'm putting myself right there next to you. As much as we convince ourselves that we are prepared and that we're willing to go to any length to survive, that there's nothing that we wouldn't do to protect our families, to survive, to not be, I guess I'll just come right out and say it, take the mark, okay? And you know what I mean, literally and figuratively. I wonder sometimes if we fully understand the level of dedication and sacrifice that we may have to do just that thing. Early on when I started making videos, I probably haven't said it in a while, but I know I've said it many times in the past, that you need to figure out whatever your line in the sand is, okay? Whatever that line in the sand that once it's crossed, it's kind of, no return after that. And you need to figure out what, not just what that line in the sand is, but what your reaction to it will be. And the reason why you need to figure it out now is because it's pretty much guaranteed that at some point this thing that's happening, this system of takeover is going to cross that line. So you better figure out now what it is and how you're going to react to it. It is quite possible, I'm not saying it will, don't get me wrong, but it's quite possible that what we will experience could be way worse than what we think. I know that the mainstream voices out there, or the bigger voices that's highly dependent upon their advertisers and stuff like that, are trying to downplay everything that's happening and say, it may be a soft landing, it may be a hard landing, it may be a this, it may be a that. But I think that many of you understand that what we're going through has the potential to be vastly catastrophic. In fact, and this is the big one, if in fact we are leading into those end time days, for those of you that are believers. Now, of course, we can't be completely sure of that. Many times in history, believers have thought we were entering those end time days. But things are looking definitely like that's where we're headed. And if that is correct, then yeah, things are going to be horribly, horribly bad. And there may come a time where we have to do things, make decisions, and make really serious sacrifices just to survive. For those of you that are involved in some type of tribe or mag, you need to be asking yourself and asking your group as a whole what you all are willing to do to survive and what sacrifices you're willing to make for each other. It could be a scenario where you have to, pack up and leave. I know many of you are like myself and my family, where we don't really have a plan to bug out. We're living at our bug out location. But if you're part of a tribe and you're kind of all spread around on your own little pieces of property and saying that you're not going to bug out, there may come a time where the only way for you to survive is for everyone to make a decision to congregate and to live in one location. I know that's not ideal. I get it. But the reality of a single family on their own trying to produce their food and protect their food and protect their home and do everything when you have one or two adults on the property are not very realistic. There may come a time, and again, this is a rather extreme scenario, I get it, but there may come a time where the only way for you to survive is to just be an outlaw and living anywhere you can to avoid capture. I was talking to a friend yesterday and talking about this scenario I'm getting ready to tell you. And again, I know it's extreme. I've been on the extreme juice this morning, I guess. But it's certainly something to think about. During World War II, there's a story, and this is well documented. It's not made up. I think I have most of the facts mostly correct. There was a Japanese pilot that went down over Guam, and he survived the crash. And of course, it was in the midst of World War II, and he hid out in the jungle, hoping to not be captured. And he basically stayed hidden throughout the war. Ended up not even realizing that the war ended. He stayed hidden in the jungle in basically a little spider hole, just barely big enough for him to fit in. And he stayed there for decades. In fact, it wasn't until I think the 90s or something, I don't remember the exact date, I think the guy was in his 80s or something, that someone found him, and finally he realized that the war had been over for decades. He thought that the war had continued to go on and he was gonna hide out because he didn't want to end up being captured by the American army. And the point that I'm getting to here is this man lived for decades in the jungle in a little spider hole trying to evade capture. Of course, no one was looking for him, but still, he was out there trying to keep from being found. As much as we kind of like, wow, that's just crazy. This is actually a fairly similar scenario of many other people in history that have tried to evade capture and have done so for a long period of time. They've gone off in the woods and they just disappeared. And they didn't have a big homestead with lots of gardens and, acres of livestock and stuff. They lived in a cave or some little shack that they built out in the woods. It's possible that the world could get bad enough that this evilness and this beast system takeover could get bad enough that the only way for folks like you and I to avoid it is to live a scenario and a life like what I just depicted. I'm not saying it will happen. I'm just saying, have you thought about it? Are you willing to sacrifice and go to those extremes to survive and avoid the system? For you men, what are you willing to do to protect your family? What extremes are you willing to go to keep this evilness out of your home? And I'm not talking in the future only, I'm talking now. What are you willing to lose? What sacrifices are you willing to make to protect what you have, to keep this evilness out, to ensure that your family doesn't have to take their mark or go off and live in their camps or their 15-minute cities? You may have to lose a lot. It's quite possible. You know, I get a lot of questions about CBDC and how once it's fully implemented and pretty much forced on us, how are we going to exist, truly exist? Many of you live off of Social Security or a form of disability or some other form of retirement. What are you going to do when that all becomes digital CBDC central bank money, where it's controlled and you have to have all this digital stuff that controls it? Are you going to give in and say, I have no other choice? Or are you going to stand your ground and potentially lose everything? Because we can sit here and say, I'll do gold and silver, I'll barter and trade, I'll use some gold-backed bank. I've said before, all those scenarios are great ideas, but they're really just temporary fixes. They're only, in the end, just buying you a little bit more time before the inevitable happens. Because if at some point in the future they want to truly force that on us, force us to take it, they can do that. They can lay the hammer down and you'll either accept it, go to jail or some kind of camp, or you'll be running around out here trying to survive because there's no other place for you. Again, I know it's extreme and it may not happen, but it very well could happen. And I think the limited amount of time and energy that it takes to play through this and to figure this out, at least in your head, right now, it's worth it. Sometimes you just have to embrace the suck. And what that means is that you understand that the things that are bad or that are going to get really bad are kind of out of your control at a certain point. And as much as you hate it, you just have to embrace it. And you have to come up with a way to survive and push through it. There's a level of dedication there that most people don't even understand. You may have to make great sacrifices. And you may have to do things that you never thought you'd ever have to do. But there are certain lines in the sand for a lot of us. And protecting our families and keeping them away from all of this evil wickedness and keeping them from having to be part of this evil system, maybe that's a line in the sand for you. And if it is, you need to be thinking about this. You need to be planning. As preppers, we talk about contingencies and backups. Well, this is one of those contingencies. It may not be the most likely scenario, but you need to allow yourself to think and to plan and to mentally prepare for the possibility of things to go very extreme and very, very bad. Way worse than a Great Depression. causes you and helps you to become more prepared, more ready. Your little tribe, your community, your mag, you need to think about this too. Because if you're going to stick together and survive and help each other, you all may have to make really hard decisions at some point to do so. And it's better to be working that out now and figuring out where you're lying in the sand and what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do, than to have to make those choices in haste and under great pressure. I know, it's crazy, isn't it? Someone would actually be saying this kind of stuff. It's because it's time to get your houses in order, folks. It's time to get yourselves, your families, your tribes, get them ready. Because the storm is coming, dark days are coming, and we don't know just how bad it's going to get. So, might as well prepare for the worst. You need to be preparing mentally, physically, and spiritually. Thank you for watching. I'll catch you in the next video.